Hey, welcome back. It's hour 2 of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. It's Money Monday, and the money world is looking a lot better this week to start off than it was last week, as the Dow continues to rise this morning as we speak, up to 90. I'd like to see it break 300. We're again well above 26,180 as we speak, and just a few weeks ago, 27,000 and above was in our sights. Some of this trade war stuff, negative interest rates out of Europe, and of course slowing sales and consumer stuff out of China and all across the globe. But I think the recession fears are just a fiction of the left, and we'll talk about all that and more in this next hour. But joining me again for the second hour, of course, Frank Morano. And Frank, there's breaking news that we need to get out there.
Breaking news within the last 20 minutes, actually. Police Commissioner James O'Neill, New York City Police Commissioner James O'Neill, has indicated that Officer Daniel Pantaleo, who was the officer involved in the Eric Garner incident, has been fired. He will no longer be a member of the NYPD. So if you haven't been following the story, 5 years ago this month, Eric Garner was being arrested on suspicion of selling untaxed cigarettes in Staten Island, New York. And in the process of him being arrested, this arrest was caught on video, which is one of the other reasons it got so much attention. In the process of being arrested, he indicated that he couldn't breathe. He said the words, "I can't breathe," 11 times. Officer Pantaleo used what some people perceive was a chokehold in an attempt to take him down when Eric Garner was resisting arrest. A lot of people say that this wasn't a chokehold. This was, in fact, a permitted seatbelt takedown, which is not prohibited by the field manual.
Which is permitted.
Right, which is not prohibited.
Right, but I'm saying, yeah, it's permitted.
Yeah. But obviously, there were some others that viewed things a bit differently. This became a very controversial case, not only because a man died, but because of the fact that it was caught on video. And obviously, there were some seeking to make this a racial issue. Now, the district attorney at the time convened a special grand jury to determine if there were any criminal charges warranted on Officer Pantaleo and on anybody else involved, any of the other officers involved, or any of the other the EMS personnel involved, or anybody. The grand jury determined no criminal charges. Then, just recently, a federal grand jury looked at the case, or the Justice Department looked at this to determine if there were any federal civil rights violations, and the Department of Justice also determined that there were no federal charges warranted. So now this was kind of the last step in the process for Officer Pantaleo. The Civilian Complaint Review Board, they determined that he should lose his job, that was the proper penalty, and a departmental judge, the Deputy Commissioner of the NYPD, agreed with that assessment by the CCRB. And now, today, the guy the buck ultimately stops with, New York City Police Commissioner James O'Neill, who you may recall was appointed by Democratic presidential candidate Bill de Blasio, has decided that he should indeed lose his job. We're going to bring you, hopefully, by the end of this hour, some video of Commissioner O'Neill explaining his decision. But he acknowledged that a lot of officers are going to be upset with this, not just around New York, but around the country. And he said, if I were a cop, this is Commissioner O'Neill speaking, who, of course, worked his way up from the very bottom of the ranks, was a transit cop. He said, if I were a cop, I'd be mad at me.
Yeah.
So he's acknowledging that the people are going to be upset about this. You're the son of a police officer, John. If your dad were still around, how do you think he'd view this decision?
I think it's a totally different police force today than it was, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, when my father was a cop. But when the commissioner himself says, if I were a cop, which he is, he's still a cop, I'd be mad at myself. That tells you that he's getting political pressure.
Well, no doubt about it.
I hear you, but Bill de Blasio is missing in action. He's nowhere to be found. And this is not just a New York issue, because we're seeing across the country, in Philadelphia, while a madman is firing at cops, people nearby are throwing things and throwing rocks at cops. And we see in New York that
Chinese food.
And buckets of water over the head. So
3 police officers injured in Brooklyn this weekend.
That's right. And it continues. We continue to see the deterioration of support for our public safety officers from all the cities. You see it a lot. And look at the sanctuary cities where we have these progressive liberal mayors, and look how they are against their police forces. Okay, also look at these same progressive mayors. They're all in the top 10 of the Orkin's most rattiest cities list. So it should tell you something about what we're supposed to get from our government is the deployment of our tax money for public safety, education, infrastructure. And when our politicians aren't supporting our public safety officers like the NYPD, that lets the people start thinking it's okay. And we talk about double jeopardy, Frank, a month or so ago. This guy had 2 different grand juries look at him, and they find nothing to bring charges on, but some administrative panel strips him.
In fairness, I'm not certain if the federal Justice Department actually presented the evidence to a grand jury,
right,
or if this was a determination that they made on their own.
2 different law enforcement agencies.
We had state law enforcement officials and federal law enforcement officials determine that there was nothing criminal. Now, what Commissioner O'Neill might say, if he were here, was, yeah, there's nothing criminal, but that doesn't mean that this is the kind of behavior that we want to encourage in our police officers. The departmental judge, in her ruling, 47-page ruling, she determined that Pantaleo had lied in the course of his testimony to people investigating this, and they determined, so perhaps that's part of the rationale. I haven't seen Commissioner O'Neill's full remarks. Hopefully we'll bring it to you by the end of this hour. But, as you point out, John, the real reason that Bill de Blasio is really, you termed it correctly, missing in action, is because he is running for president. He's one of 24, maybe 25 Democratic candidates for president.
That's right.
Now, we've tried to get a number of them on the show, including Bill de Blasio. We've tried for Bernie Sanders. We've tried for Andrew Yang, who I figured would be right up your alley because you're both crypto guys. We've tried for Marianne Williamson. We've tried for Mike Gravel, who's no longer in the race. We've tried for Joe Sestak. We've had no luck getting any Democratic presidential candidate on the show until today.
Now we have. You want to talk about a watershed moment for Liquid Lunch? When you're only on air for like 3 months and you get a presidential candidate, a U.S. presidential candidate, that's big. Mark this day down. Don't forget it. 8/19/19 will be a day we will never forget, Frank. And this morning we did get a few minutes in the street with a candidate for the Democratic primary. And Frank and I just ran into him in the street. Here he is. We're going to independently verify these claims for Newsmax and Liquid Lunch, but we're trying to track down all presidential candidates, and this guy wants to be the boss.
You're running in the Democratic primary?
Democratic primary, I take any publicity. I ran 3 times before. I ran the U.S. Senate 3 or 4 times against Lombard, Cory Booker.
What qualifies you to be the president of the United States?
Because I'm honest, I got integrity. I know all the secrets, how criminal they are.
Really? Were you in the military?
No.
What's your national defense background for the safety of Americans? Tell me.
Tell them on let me know if we have
like so street tool, they knock you off.
Wow.
Are you on the ballot?
I will be. I've done about 17 times before. Twice for governor of New Jersey. 3 or 4 times U.S. Senate, 3 times U.S. Congress. Mayor of my small town, and 3 times.
What mayor were you?
Good, I ran for mayor.
You ran for mayor.
Ran at Assemblyman. All right. Google my name, Jeffrey Boss Congress. Comes up.
You have a website?
Yes, I do.
JeffreyBoss.org.
BossForCongress.com. Now, John, here's the interesting thing.
This is one of the things that's great about America.
Now, here's the interesting thing. So many of you might think that's just a normal wacko on the street. That's not. That is actually a Democratic presidential candidate, Jeff Boss. Here's the amazing thing. And this is a big hello to our viewers in New Jersey, the great state of New Jersey, at least until I share this fact with you. Jeff Boss did indeed run for governor of New Jersey in the Democratic primary against John Corzine in 2009. He finished 3rd and got 8.3% of the vote in the Democratic primary for governor of New Jersey in 2009. So, first of all, the question I'm asking is, what is going on in the state of New Jersey that there's 8.3% of Democrats that wanted Jeff Boss to be the boss, to be your governor? And the amazing thing is, there was a guy that he beat. Roger W. Bacon only got 5% of the vote. So there's actually a person out there that finished behind Jeff Boss for governor of New Jersey. And he has run for president before. He ran as an independent candidate in 2008, where he received
We got Bernie Carrick on the
639
phone. You
votes
wanna
as
do
a
it
presidential
next-
candidate. But
we
our
got
big
Bernie
story
Carrick.
is, of course, the
Next
firing
segment.
of Officer Daniel Pantaleo. And we have a real expert that we've talked to in that respect before. Former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik is on the phone. Commissioner, thanks so much. I'm sure everyone's tugging at you today. Give us your reaction to Commissioner O'Neill's decision to fire Officer Pantaleo.
Yeah, Frank, I couldn't be more disappointed for a number of different reasons. One, this decision is political in my view. I think people have to realize maybe they don't as I do. I've been involved in the martial arts since I was 13 years old. It was not a chokehold. It was a takedown. That's what I saw. That I physically saw with my own eyes. That's number one. Number two, I think Commissioner O'Neill's comments, if I was a cop, I know I would be mad right now. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what every cop in the city of New York, they're going to be mad. They're going to be concerned. They're going to be outraged. Most importantly, they're going to have a question in their mind. When I go out and do my job, and it's a difficult decision, a guy resisting arrest, a lawful arrest, and I have to use force, and that force goes bad, am I going to be indemnified? Am I going to be supported? Am I going to be, looked after by the department? Well, the answer is no.
Commissioner, so what is this going to do to morale among police officers?
Destroy. Listen, Frank, that decision was made 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago. I've gotten over 60 text messages, and I can't tell you how many emails in 5 minutes.
Wow.
So this is not good. It's not. It sends a really bad message to the men and women in the NYPD.
Commissioner, unfortunately, this is a story that it's likely to have repercussions for a long, long time. I hope we can check back on this story and follow up with you in the future.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Take care,
Thank
guys.
you, Commissioner. So that's it. The guests who know where the rubber meet the road, that was the commissioner in New York, and he says this is going to be very bad for morale. And the morale here is still going to be good because we're chugging through hour two. We'll keep you posted on Commissioner Kerik and his thoughts on what's happening with this breaking news. And we'll come back right after this with David Grasso to talk about bold business.